Hello.
Spoilers for Star Wars The High Republic content. Our story begins in 232 BBY on the Starlight Beacon, the first of what is to become numerous beacons of hope placed around the galactic frontier. The station was maintained by the Republic and consistently held Jedi inside of it. This was per the request of Chancellor Lina So, and of course mandated by the Jedi High Council. On the council at this time sat three Grand Masters, Laru, Prat Deviter, and Yoda. The creation of the Starlight Beacon, and the ones that were meant to follow, were supposed to be the final frontier for the Republic as they made their push into the Outer Rim territories. The only thing that stood in their way were a band of pirates and marauders called the Nihil. They were keeping the Jedi far away from the rest of the Outer Rim. This group was vile, and they were only becoming more and more hostile and more powerful. Shortly after the construction of this institution of the Starlight Beacon, Jedi Master Avar Kriss was placed into the role of Marshal of the beacon itself, essentially becoming the leader of the operation. Months later, the Republic fair would have trouble, thanks to another rancid strike made by the Nihil. They snuck into the fair meant to show off the galaxy's greatest and most fearsome beasts, and then the Nihil came in and blasted open the gates and released these apex predators onto the people of the Republic. It was a massive zoo, and the Jedi had to tame the creatures before they killed the citizens of the Republic. This was at the height of Jedi heroics. Instead of using their weapons, they used the Force, collectively to tame the massive beasts. Following the attack at the zoo, the Chancellor's life was thrown into danger by the Nihil once more, but it was thwarted by Jedi Master Stellar Gaios. The chaos continued for the corresponding year, and a number of battles would transpire, requiring Jedi Padawans to stand tall when no one was near, forcing members of the Nihil to turn on each other, and finally the most devastating, the sabotage of the Starlight Beacon. It was during a trip that Master Yoda was there. He was visiting in a means to make sure everything was operating seamlessly, and that would be further from the truth once he arrived. The Nihil sabotaged the reactor, which exploded and compromised every single vital system in the station. This released radiation into the entire midsection of the station, requiring the Jedi to go in and solve the issue. Master Yoda went alongside a number of others to ensure the rest of the station wasn't compromised, but during their attempt to save the station, they encountered creatures called the Nameless. These creatures have a natural affinity for targeting Force-sensitive beings and essentially hunting them. Over a number of days, Jedi Master Nib Esset and Jedi Wayseeker Orla Journey were killed by the Nameless. It also became clear that the station as a whole was crumbling, and the frontier had been seemingly lost to the Nihil. Yoda ordered a complete fallback to the Order, requesting all Jedi to return to the Grand Temple on Coruscant because of the Nameless and their ability to cripple and kill Force-sensitive beings. Before Yoda could escape, he and Estella Maria and Stellan Gaios died in the destruction of the Starlight Beacon. The three of them sacrificed themselves to save the crew and a number of other Jedi who barely escaped in time. The death of the Grand Master was a hefty one for the Jedi Order to deal with. On the High Council, the respective members discussed what would become of their council and the Order. With Prat Deviter and Laru still serving as Grand Masters, there was a debate that had to be held. With new members on the council such as Yariel Poof and Oparan Cesis, they had to decide what would be done. What would Yoda do in this situation, and how would he handle such adversity? It was soon revealed that Mycrenes Ro was responsible for the Republic losses and great death. He was also responsible for the destruction of the Starlight Beacon and the Republic loss at Valo. His accomplishments forced the Republic from the Outer Rim territories and vanquished the Jedi from intermingling that far away from Republic territory. It was too dangerous. The Council decided that they would implement the three Grandmaster rule to ensure that the Council had continuous voices speaking on behalf of the Order. As the years slowly went by, a number of Grandmasters passed away from natural causes. Laru and Prat Deviter decided on making Yariel Poof one of the Grandmasters before they perished. By a complete surprise, one of the newest members of the High Council was voted into the role of Grand Master. Firstly, it was due to her age, but also her species. It was Jedi Master Yaddle, and the collective council believed that she would be a fine addition to the council as a whole. Because of these interchangeable Grand Masters and the role they filled, the view on the Jedi began to rapidly change, though they didn't stray too far away from the Republic. The Nihil were still large, and without the support of the Republic, the Jedi wouldn't have much of a chance to stand against them. It was simply unrealistic to believe they would. So, they didn't, but they would consistently jump back and forth from being with the Republic politically and not. In 102 BBY, two future faces of the Jedi Order would be born, Dooku of Sereno and Sifo Dyas. They would be brought to the Jedi Order in the few years following their births. In the next couple of decades, Yariel Poof would step down from the role of Grand Master, but continue to keep his seat on the High Council. Next to Master Yaddle, who kept her seat, was Master Opa-Rancisis, who had been on the council for just about the same amount of time as Yariel, and the other seat was filled by one of the newest additions to the High Council in Master Plo Koon. He was a Keldor and was respected amongst the Barando sages from his home world. They believed his input would be valuable and their assessment would be correct. Oppo held a view that the Jedi should stay close to the Republic politically, while Yaddle and Plo were much more indifferent to the notion. As time furthered, Yaddle would decide that she would take on the training of Dooku, and Plo Koon would do Sifo Dyas. They were so close, and Plo and Yaddle, per the request of the Council, began instructing the two friends. It was a test the Council had wanted to try for a number of years, but they hadn't found anyone they believed to be suitable for the task. Dooku and Sifo Dyas had a bond off the bat, and they both seemed talented enough to be up to the challenge of being trained by Grand Masters each. The intention was to see if the Council could be responsible for Jedi Council-like Masters and Knights. This wasn't meant to say that the Council was better or above anyone. There are several cases of Jedi in their times being highly respected and never being on a council. Revan was a great example, and so was Avar Kriss. But the Council was more so curious if they could have Council-caliber students not on the Council and within the Order as a whole to collectively inspire the group of Jedi. It was possible, but the training for Dooku and Sifo Dyas went outstanding. Both students passed with flying colors within a decade of their training beginning. Both Yaddle and Plo had different ways of approaching these two students, because both Sifo Dyas and Dooku adopted a mind of their own by the time they were young adults, though neither of them had any large issues with the Jedi Order as a whole. Thanks to the multiple Grand Masters' rule, the Jedi were still rapidly expanding and consistently at odds with the actions of the Republic, which had begun to fall to corporate greed and consistent inability to prove victorious. With Opa-Rancisis as one of the Grand Masters, he suggested that with the Nihil becoming weaker and weaker, that perhaps the Council should make a move on the Outer Rim. Had Yoda still been alive, he may have suggested the same thing, or because of his loyalty to the Republic, he may have also not decided to mention it. And while Oppa was more in tune with the politics of the Republic, he believed it couldn't hurt to see if the Republic would be willing to fund resources into a movement into the Outer Rim territories. Since the fall of the Nihil, a number of other criminal empires sprouted. It was like seeds, and the Marauders bounced out of the falling organization and found themselves within the Black Suns, Zygerians, Pikes, and the Hutts. It was a big ring of bullies, and anyone who treaded on their territories faced their wrath. Though, as Oppa noted, without a strong central power like the Nihil, perhaps they could take the fight to them individually without them teaming up with each other and making it difficult for the Republic or the Jedi. This wasn't a terrible idea. However, when the information was brought to Chancellor Chasi and Pian, their request was essentially put to the side and forgotten about. It was arduous to deal with the Senate, and now a lot of the Council began to disfavor the idea of working with them. Though they needed the backing from the Senate if they wanted any shot in the galaxy to take a strong stand against the Outer Rim crime families. It's not that they wanted to stay at home here, but the operations were far too large, so instead they sent out some of their best members, two of them being Sifo Dyas and Dooku, to sneak into the Zygerian facilities on their capital world of Zygeria. It was the smallest faction out of the four major ones. They weren't just the smallest, but they were the weakest in power, and the Jedi could play into this a couple different ways. Though Dooku and his friend Sifo Dyas, alongside the newly crowned Master Windu, could suggest a conspiracy to the Council. It wasn't much, but it was an idea that could work against their greedy minds, make them have a war with each other. The Jedi would send out parties of hundreds of Jedi with some of their best council members. They would steal shuttles and fighters from the crime families, and then attack shipments of the other pirates in disguise. So whenever the pirate shipments were being attacked, they would believe it was one of their rivals had done it rather than, say, for example, the Jedi or the Republic, who hadn't been in the Outer Rim for nearly 200 years. It was since the fall of the Starlight Beacon at the very least since they were last out there. Regardless, it was an operation that would take years and claim lives, but eventually the Pikes had enough of their spice shipments being intercepted by the Hutts, and the Black Suns had enough of the Pikes trying to steal their shipments. It was beautiful, and the poor Zygerians looked on, wanting to be cool enough to get involved when they really weren't. It's okay, they had something else to worry about. The Jedi knew how to crush them and beat them at their own game. They did it once and surely they could do it again. The Republic was informed of all of this, and they still didn't show much of care for it. Chancellor Pian was selling his soul to bureaucrats and corporations because who doesn't love a little cash? However, it would cost him, because by the end of his term, he was one of the last of his species before he was the very last one, and died knowing that with his death, his species would vanquish from the galaxy. How quaint. Regardless of that self-inflicted tragedy, the Jedi's plans had worked, and with the new Chancellor, things could actually pan out really positively. By this point, Dooku had himself 2 apprentices and was certainly making a case to be welcomed into the council. So was Sifo-Dyas, but ironically, this is exactly what Dooku wanted. He wanted the Jedi Order out in the galaxy more, and because his master wasn't complacent, only being 400 years old, rather than 800, she actually listened to him. All of this went to say that with the crime families having a monster mash, the Senate actually paid attention to what was actually happening. The Senate, seeing potential in this war between the crime families, decided, under the leadership of Togruta Chancellor Kimraz Kaj, that they would enlist the brand new Venator-class Star Destroyer, which had been introduced by the Kuat drive yards. By this point, Chancellor Kaj saw that her leadership was beginning to expire, and with a lifelong politician like Valorum running up popularity, she knew the time was now or never to take control over the situation and seize support from her constituents. With the assistance of the Jedi, the Republic jumped down into the Outer Rim and wiped the floor with the struggling crime families. In the same year as Venator's construction, Master Dooku was introduced to Sheev Palpatine, a rising politician from Naboo. Dooku had no issues with Palpatine, but he also didn't have any favor towards him either. Dooku and his friends were heroes, and their work was actively freeing people from the Outer Rim slave rings. Chancellor Kaj backed everything the Jedi started fully, which allowed her to win re-election with more support than her first election provided. It was really a show of the times. This did put Hego Damask and Palpatine into an odd predicament. While Palpatine at this point had his assassin Maul under his control and training him, Hego had to reset his plans for wiping out the Jedi. Creating life seemed to not work, and Palpatine wasn't as favorable as a politician because the Republic saw credits in the Outer Rim, and so the corporate alliances began to suffer because of it. If the Republic could get everything naturally from planets in the Outer Rim without having to deal with the corporate greed, then they would be able to put them out of business and keep their business but run it cheaper for themselves, while selling at the same price, obviously. Yeah, it sucked for their constituents, but they could drop the prices if they felt it would help their re-election results, which is what they would do in due time. This in turn made Hego Damask lose a lot of his wealth, which completely wiped Palpatine from his external support. Those policies weren't exactly turning heads either. He played it safe, and with the use of his charisma, he warmed the hearts of those around him, but his lack of attention towards anything going on in and around the Outer Rim cost him any chance to go further in politics. This led to a falling out between Plagueis and Palpatine. They didn't kill each other, it was just more so a divorce, and Plagueis left Palpatine in the gutter where he found him. To make things better, Plagueis informed the Jedi that Palpatine was using the Force, and so the Jedi quickly discovered Palpatine and Maul. A collective group had to be sent to kill Palpatine, and Maul was taken into the Jedi Order. His poor and tortured soul could be saved. It would just take some time, work, which is what Master Sifo-Dyas would do. Within 10 years, the sound of the Sith had been lost. The Jedi were very curious to know if Palpatine and Maul were the master and apprentice of the Sith. They assumed they were, and so they moved on with their lives. The Outer Rim crime families had been gone for this entire time period, and within the span of a decade, the corporate alliances lost all of their wealth. And so Plagueis could not rely on them for a setup at the invasion of Naboo. Regardless, he returned to Moraband. It wasn't easy for the Sith, but it seemed as if they had been products of their own failures. Plagueis was focused on making himself immortal, and so he kinda neglected the purpose of the Rule of Two. However, with Palpatine's divorce, he believed that he'd better suit himself, focusing on becoming immortal. The Jedi, on the other hand, hadn't fully expanded off of Coruscant, but Chancellor Kaj was enacting the Starlight Beacon project again. All those plans were in files in the Galactic Senate, and she simply took them and ran with them, because, well, they were there. On the other hand, the Jedi supported the notion of doing so, and as they continued to pour their own resources into assisting the Outer Rim, they discovered a vergence in the Force. There was a boy, recently one of the several million sentients freed from the slavers, who was discovered by Council member Sifo-Dyas while training Maul. The boy's name was Anakin Skywalker. He was brought back to the Council despite his age, and with the collective group of Sifo-Dyas, Mace Windu, Yaddle, Plo Koon, Dooku, and a lot of them, they agreed to bring Skywalker into the Jedi Order. However, he would be trained personally by the 3 Grand Masters, Plo Koon, Yaddle, and Opa Rancisis. While this was seemingly a perfect setup, there was not a Sith in the galaxy to worry about. Oh yeah, Plagueis survived, and yeah, he went to Moraband. Did he figure out how to become immortal? No. He did learn that he was indeed mortal though. He played around with the Force, and being that the Force didn't like that, it stripped him from his life. Literally. He was doing a new technique, and the amount of the Force that he used created a detonation so large that it engulfed the entire planet. No one would ever know what happened either. But when it did, the Sith were gone. As for Maul, he was actually becoming quite the reformed Jedi, and his life was beginning to get somewhat enjoyable. He found happiness with his new best friend and Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi. He felt looked after. Not that the Collective Council hadn't done that for him before, but he enjoyed the companionship. Within 5 years, Chancellor Kaj would step down from her seat and Chancellor Valorum would rise behind her, as he would soon join her in the celebration of the first Starlight Beacon seen in generations. This new hope wasn't for the frontier of the galaxy, more so a base of operations to ensure the pirates, Nihil, Hutts, Black Suns, Zygerians, or Pikes never gained traction again. This also put a limit on all other pirating activities, which forced individuals like Hondo Anaka into other businesses. But like any good pirate, there was profit in the air anywhere, as long as he looked for it, of course. Skywalker would eventually rise to the ranks as a powerful young Jedi, and with no reason to lean towards anger, it would naturally find his way out of him for the most part. He would eventually join the Council too. With the Sith gone and the Republic returning to its rightful role in the galaxy, a chance for rebirth and renewal was possible through this gilded Republic, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story. Again, special thanks to Galvin Gaming, Tristan, Darth Revan, Pimp Daddy Bane, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Mad Matty Studios, Anakin003, Lemon Knight, Rex the Wolf, the man with 3 first names, Dark Saint 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing for supporting the channel. Smash the like button if you enjoyed this video. If you want to support me in other ways, go check out the Patrons. You get access to early stuff and all that stuff. Extra stuff. Yeah, it's super extra. Like me. Anyways, this was actually a really fun video to do. I've been really wanting to get in the High Republic, and this video kind of encouraged me to get into it. I was originally going to do a Revenge of the Sith video today, but it just didn't really flow for me, and this felt a lot more natural for me. And while there's a lot of lore that goes into this, a lot of stuff that a lot of people probably don't know about, I kind of wanted to touch on some things that happened, but also how things could have changed. The only thing that really changes in this story is Yoda going to the Starlight Beacon. He wasn't there when it was sabotaged by the Nihil, but I was setting him up there to die there so that he would die there making the ultimate sacrifice. But I really wanted to see what would happen if the Jedi Council and the Jedi Order had changed without Yoda. I mean, this is more so a story about what if Plo became Grand Master, or what if Yaddle became Grand Master, and it's just combining a bunch of other what ifs into one what if to say, well, what if all these masters became Grand Masters? Because, during that time of the High Republic, there were 3 Grand Masters. Again, it was Prater Viter, Larue, and Yoda. So when you remove Yoda from the equation, do Larue and Prater Viter, of course, go on with that rule. Obviously, being that this is the what if, of course they did. But I don't know. Tell me what you thought. If you want to see more High Republic content, let me know. I plan on doing Anakin and the High Republic and Anakin and the Old Republic at some point. So, it's going to come. I just need to learn more about it so I don't, misconstrue the facts about the story. So anyways, I love you all. Spread the love. And always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.